Dam Hetch Hetchy. As well, dam for water tanks the people's cathedrals and churches. For no holier temple has ever been consecrated by the heart of man. That was John Muir. And he was, of course, talking about the O'Shaughnessy Dam and the Hetch Hetchy Valley of Yosemite National Park. You can tell from that quote just how much Muir loved this place. He was a deeply spiritual man, and you can see this in his writings and the way he talks about nature. Everything is very reverential and prosaic, so it's not really a surprise that he felt this way about Hetch Hetchy and the efforts to dam it. The story of that dam and the subsequent flooding of the Hetch Hetchy Valley is one of the most contentious and controversial projects to have ever taken place in a national park. And I want to tell you that story. But to understand why it's so controversial and why John Muir felt so strongly about it, you really have to understand the social and political climate in the United States at that time. This was the beginning of the 20th century, and America is coming out of what's known as the Gilded Age, a time when corruption was rampant, working and living conditions were terrible, and wealth was concentrated in the hands of a small minority. It wasn't actually so different from today. But back then, in response to these so-called robber barons and the terrible social conditions, comes what's known as the progressive movement. Now, progressives saw all of this corruption and greed as a moral failure. They wanted to clean up the corrupt local governments, rein in greedy businesses, improve working conditions in factories, and make cities safer and healthier. They wanted to expand the vote and make democracy more, democratic. And floating above this entire movement was a firmly held belief in the power of the government to do good, to bring about change for the better. Specifically, progressives believed that public works projects were sort of the best ethical use of the government's money and resources. This is actually the period of American history where we see much of what we consider to be modern infrastructure being built. We're talking water and sewer systems, roads, electricity, the sorts of things today we just sort of expect our cities to provide for us. Okay, so that's what the progressive movement was really about on a national level. But it was really at the local level where you saw a lot of these ideas put into practice, especially with public works projects. And at this time, San Francisco needed these public works projects. Its population was booming after the California Gold Rush, the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, and a massive increase in immigration. California is also a very dry state, so no other infrastructure project was as important to San Francisco officials as a water system. Now, before we move on, I want to introduce a sort of parallel movement to progressivism here. It's known as Utilitarian Conservation. Along with those progressive ideas about social issues came this fledgling idea that we should protect the environment, not just destroy it. Utilitarian conservationists believe that people, humans, have a right to use natural resources to our benefit as long as we don't overexploit them. Basically, we should conserve natural resources so we can continue to benefit from them in the future. And the poster boy for this movement was a guy named Gifford Pinchot. He was the first chief of the US Forest Service and a big proponent of utilitarian conservation. He has this famous quote in his book Breaking New Ground where he says, "Conservation is the foresighted utilization, preservation, and/or renewal of forests, waters, lands, and minerals for the greatest good of the greatest number for the longest time." That quote basically sums up this entire utilitarian conservation philosophy, but we'll come back to Pinchot in a minute. Because the progressive movement and the utilitarian conservation movement are about to coalesce when it comes to San Francisco's water problems. City officials had identified the Hetch Hetchy Valley as a prime candidate for a reservoir to meet their drinking water needs. Hetch Hetchy had a narrow opening, so it only required a relatively small dam. The height of the valley meant the dam could also produce hydropower, and the valley's granite composition meant it would produce clean, high-quality drinking water. Progressives saw this as the ultimate public works project, the government providing a service for the betterment of society, and utilitarian conservationists saw this as a way for the natural environment to benefit a large number of people. But this project wasn't just going to go ahead without a hitch. people like John Muir were like, whoa, you can't just build a dam in a national park. These places are supposed to be preserved as they are for future generations to enjoy. You can't just destroy an entire valley so one city can have drinking water. In fact, Muir thought Hetch Hetchy was just as beautiful as the Yosemite Valley, which is only like 20 miles to the south. He described it as a, quote, remarkably exact counterpart to its more famous neighbor, and called it one of nature's rarest and most precious mountain temples. It just wasn't as developed yet. It was still in a much more natural state than the Yosemite Valley. And so Muir waged a campaign to protect it. He worried about the precedent this project would set. Where did we draw the line? What would national parks even be if we built dams in them? He and Pinchot were the public faces on either side of two very different philosophies about the environment. Pinchot and his utilitarian conservationists were basically saying, hey, we like nature, but we also think it can benefit us. We're pro-dam. But Muir and his preservationists were like, not everything has to benefit humans. Some things can just exist because they're scenic and beautiful. We're anti-dam. And for a time, the preservationists were winning. The Interior Department twice denied San Francisco's application to dam Hetch Hetchy. City officials even voted to abandon the project entirely in 1906 and search for water elsewhere. But then, the Great San Francisco Earthquake of 1906 hit. The earthquake caused a fire that destroyed most of the city. They couldn't fight the fire because the pipes to their nearby reservoirs were destroyed. Once again, San Francisco needed water. And once again, they turned to Hetch Hetchy. Only this time, Congress was going to get involved, and San Francisco had public sympathy on their side. They applied for a permit and were granted it, but President Taft's new Interior Secretary, Richard Bellinger, put it on hold for a bit and said, hang on, I want you to justify why you need this thing. Why should we put a dam in a national park? So, San Francisco officials go away and come back with this 400-page document called the Freeman Report. Now, before I go into the Freeman Report, I want to talk about this idea circulating at the time. It's kind of like a compromise idea, because now that Congress is involved, elected officials are really wary of taking away a part of a national park like Yosemite and basically giving it away to the city of San Francisco. But at the same time, San Francisco is recovering from this earthquake and this fire, and there's a lot of sympathy for their situation. So the idea comes about that if the dam is built, the city will help pay for a bunch of recreation infrastructure so that people can still access the valley, or really the reservoir that would be created there. There's that utilitarian conservation mindset again. Yes, the dam is going to provide water to San Francisco, but people can still use the area and it's a win-win. Now, back to the Freeman Report. Of course, the report is like, we really need this dam. We need water. We don't really see any issues. Oh, and yeah, we'll build some roads and trails and stuff. So the Army Corps of Engineers is like, cool. Congress is like, cool. And they passed the Raker Act, authorizing construction of the O'Shaughnessy Dam in Hetch Hetchy Valley. Woodrow Wilson had this to say after he signed the act. Quote, I have signed this bill because it seemed to serve the pressing public needs of the region concerned better than they could be served in any other way, and yet did not impair the usefulness or materially detract from the beauty of the public domain. End quote. And so everybody's like, cool. No, not cool. There was some funky stuff going on with these reports and with the Raker Act itself. For one thing, the Freeman Report was not an independent report. It was commissioned by the city of San Francisco. Of course, they have an incentive to produce a report that says the dam should be built. And that's not necessarily a bad thing by itself. The Army Corps of Engineers still needed to review it and either agree or disagree with its findings. Except they didn't do that. This is from a New York Times editorial back in 1913. Quote, the engineers say in their report that they have merely passed on such data as were presented by the officials of San Francisco, since they had neither time nor money to investigate independently the various projects presented. End quote. So the people in charge of reviewing this report for accuracy didn't bother to check how accurate it was, and instead accepted its conclusions, which were clearly written from the perspective of someone who had an incentive for the dam to be built. Good stuff. But that's not all. The Interior Secretary who endorsed the Raker Act itself was named Franklin Lane. The same Franklin Lane who was the city attorney for San Francisco in 1903. I mean, that's nuts. You can't make this stuff up. Horace Albright, who would go on to be the second director of the National Park Service, had this to say, quote, Franklin Lane's appointment to the cabinet was made specifically for the purpose of pushing this, the so-called Raker-Pittman bill, end quote. I think it's safe to say at this point that the dice were loaded in favor of the dam's proponents. Heck, even the San Francisco media was in on this. They called the dam's opponents a, quote, crowd of nature lovers and fakers who are waging a sentimental campaign to preserve the Hetch Hetchy Valley as a public playground, a purpose for which it has never been used, end quote. Except the part where it was used as a national park. You left that part out. Anyway, so there was some shady stuff going on with this dam. The political will and public sentiment were too strong to prevent it from being built. Hetch Hetchy was drowned under 300 feet of water. Muir's preservationists had lost. He died just over a year after the Raker Act was passed, reportedly from a broken heart. But if there was any solace to be taken from this situation, it was the fact that the newly created reservoir was to be used for recreation and public enjoyment. San Francisco was supposed to build roads and trails so that people could continue to recreate in Hetch Hetchy. Yeah, that never happened. Yosemite Superintendent W.B. Lewis said at the time, quote, I always felt and still feel that the powers that be in the city have as their ultimate aim that of excluding the public not only from the area in the immediate vicinity of Hetch Hetchy, but from the entire quality watershed including Tuolumne Meadows, end quote. San Francisco dragged its feet for years to avoid contaminating its precious drinking water, even though they had agreed to this infrastructure as part of the Raker Act. Eventually, they did reach a resolution with the National Park Service to build one road to the reservoir, a trail that goes halfway along the reservoir's north shore only, and they agreed to pay for improvements to the Tioga Road. Now, that last part is key because one of the stipulations of the Raker Act was that San Francisco would pay to construct a new loop road to improve public access to Hetch Hetchy. It would tie into the Tioga Road and greatly reduce travel times through the newly flooded valley. They effectively opted out of this by paying for improvements to the Tioga Road only. And instead of, following the law, they tried to have the Raker Act amended retroactively. That's right, they tried to amend the act to basically say the Tioga Road improvements were okay and they didn't have to do the new loop road. That never happened, but to this day they still have never paid for the loop road, and they're still in violation of the law. San Francisco had effectively stolen this valley from the American people. I know that's going to ruffle some feathers, and I've tried to look at this issue 6 ways from Sunday, but I honestly can't feel any other way about it. This was a pristine, glacial valley in the heart of a national park. It should never have been touched in the first place. But then you at least have these promises to expand public access to it once that dam was built. Those promises have been broken. This is a valley largely locked away to the American people, its benefits flowing only to a select few. That's not how national parks should be run. And it's worth noting too that serious changes were made after this. The conflict over Hetch Hetchy is seen as the birthplace of the modern environmental movement. It forced us as a society and as a nation to really reevaluate how we viewed nature and our role within it. We also had to reevaluate what we wanted our national parks to be. Just 3 years after the Raker Act was passed, mostly in response to the perceived mismanagement of Yosemite, Congress passed the National Park Service Organic Act, creating the agency which would go on to steward and protect our national parks. No other dam has been built in a national park since. Now, there have been several attempts and campaigns to remove the O'Shaughnessy Dam and restore the Hetch Hetchy Valley to its original state. They've largely been met with hostility and backlash. Dianne Feinstein has called Hetch Hetchy's water San Franciscans' quote, birthright, said she will do everything in her power to fight the restoration, and has called the campaign, and this is a direct quote, I want to get this right, she has called it, quote, dumb, dumb, dumb. In 2012, San Francisco voters overwhelmingly voted against even studying the removal of the dam. Not removing the dam, studying the removal. In 2019, the House of Representatives stuck in a last-minute measure to the end of the year spending bill that banned boating on the reservoir. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that restoring Hetch Hetchy is easy. It's not. A 2006 study estimated the cost of removing the dam and replacing the Bay Area's lost water and power at between $3 and $10 billion. It would take decades, if not centuries, before Hetch Hetchy looked the way it did before it was dammed. San Francisco's drinking water would have to be reallocated among existing reservoirs, and they'd actually have to filter their water for once, and water recycling programs would need to be introduced. That's not insignificant. There are real challenges here, with real impacts for real people. But in my opinion at least, it's the right thing to do. So that's all I have for you about Hetch Hetchy. If you like learning about parks and protected areas, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. I tell park stories like this one, and you can help me bring them to a bigger audience. And to end, I'll leave you with another John Muir quote. He said this just after the decision to build the dam was made. Quote, "The conscience of the whole country has been aroused from sleep, and from outrageous evil, compensating good in some form must surely come." Thanks for watching. Goodbye.